Hey there, I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate.
And today we're taking a look at The Quick and the Undead by InsideUp Games.
The Quick and the Undead is a worker placement game in which you are playing as a leader of outlaws, trying to take over certain buildings in a town. There's a little bit of area control in this game, but there's also zombies, and you want to make sure to shoot those zombies. The mechanic there behind shooting one another, whether you're shooting a zombie or you're shooting another player, is pretty unique. It's one that I think really stands out in this game. Let's go down below, we'll show you how it works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on this. All right, here's The Quick and the Undead. Let me show you guys how this zombie Western theme game works. This is a worker placement game in which you are going to be placing your outlaws on the different spaces on the board here, but you're also going to be trying to control these buildings, so there's a little bit of area control, and there are zombies, as I mentioned, and so you're going to be shooting these zombies as well as the other players. That's the three main concepts in this game. You do have some resources. You've got some victory point tokens. These are notoriety, and so you want to be the most notorious outlaw. But there is also money in the game, and you have bullets. Bullets are extremely important. These tokens are double-sided. This is just an empty casing. It represents not having a bullet, and then you flip this over, and that is your bullet there. So you are going to keep track of those different resources. On your turn, what you are going to do is you're going to pick one of these spots out here to place a worker, and you do that by secretly putting your D8 on one of the numbers that corresponds to the space that you want to put your worker. Now, if you don't want to put your worker on any of these spaces, instead you could say, you know what, I'm hiring guns this round, and you put your D8 over here, and you have to pay $2 or one notoriety point, and you get to take another worker. Now, there's only 2 at the beginning of the game, so you can only ever do this twice throughout the course of the game, but it does add to your stack of workers. You start with 4 at the beginning of the game. Instead, you could go to one of these spots, and these spots are going to let you do certain actions listed above this line. And so, for instance, this is the action to attack one of the zombies anywhere in the town, which there could be a zombie in the street, or there could be zombies in the buildings. We'll come back to what that looks like here in a second. Or you could intimidate. This line here means you're going to pick one or the other. So intimidation, what that means is, and you're going to see that on several of the spots on the board, if there's another player who has placed their worker for that round on the corresponding spaces, one of these corresponding spaces, so 5 for instance, then you can intimidate that player. And what that means is you're saying to that person, unless you give me any combination of 2 resources, whether it's bullets, notoriety points, or money, then I'm going to try to shoot you. And so that player has to decide whether they want to give you those 2 resources, or they're going to say, you know what, I feel lucky, you try your best. And so what that means is they are going to get one chance, and one chance only, to roll their D8 and hopefully get one of the numbers where they have a bullet. And if so, then they're going to spin that bullet, and they have successfully shot that person, and that outlaw is dead. He goes over here to Boot Hill. And Boot Hill is the place where all the zombies are coming from, because this is like the graveyard. And so at the beginning of the game, you're going to put 3 zombie cards per player in this pile, and anytime someone dies, a new zombie is going to come out. And so what these zombies look like, they're going to have some artwork, and there's going to show you a list of numbers at the top. The fewer the numbers there are, the more difficult it is to kill that zombie, but correspondingly, the more notoriety points there are going to be on that card. So this is one of the hardest zombies to kill. You can only kill it with a 4, but it gives you 6 victory points, notoriety points at the end of the game. And these zombies, like I said, they go in the street, they can go in buildings, and when they go in buildings, you just tuck them under the card there. And so long as there's a zombie in a building, that building is not going to give you the resources that it might give you if you control that building. So you want to keep the buildings free of zombies. Now, that's what it looks like whenever you're attacking another player. You're also going to attack other players if you ever end up picking the same space. So for instance, if we both picked, let's say 6 here, we both ended up putting 6 on our D8, and we end up putting our people right here. This has to be on the same turn, by the way. You're not going to do this if people have
They're workers from a previous round out here. But if it's the same turn, then you're going to have a duel, and both players are going to do basically the same thing. One chance to try to shoot the other player, and if one person gets hit and the other doesn't, then it's the person who gets hit that dies, and they would move their meeple over here to Boot Hill, same thing. But if both players end up hitting each other, then it's whoever has the higher number. That's who's going to win that battle. Real quick, if you do roll an 8 and you have your skull icon showing on your critical hit token, then that is a critical hit and you are automatically successful. You win that duel no matter what. If instead, though, you don't have your skull showing, then an 8's not going to count. It's going to be a miss. And if you have the gun, the backfire showing, then you roll a 1. That is a critical miss. You don't want to do that. Back to our action spots here. There are also places that are going to allow you to steal resources from another player or attack this zombie, the zombie that's in the street. This icon here means you can only attack this zombie. Now back to what this also does below the line, that's going to show you the resources that you gain from going to this spot. So if I go here, I can get money or notoriety. Going here lets me get 1 of anything, whereas going here is going to give me 2 bullets, so on and so forth. So you also gain resources when you pick the spot that you're going to. At the end of any turn where you've placed a worker out here on the board, but not necessarily when you put your D8 out here to get a new person, you have the option to buy a building. And that's what this icon right here means. I can turn in my money to buy one of these buildings, and the cost is right here. And what that means is I have to put one of my workers, so that I'm losing a worker when I do this, and I put them on that building. And if I control this building at the end of the game, I'm gonna get that amount of victory points, notoriety. And if I can kill off all the zombies, then I get whatever's listed here on the sides. And some of those are going to give me immediate benefits at the start of every round. Sometimes it's going to be something at the end of the game or long term. And that's how that works. Now, and other players can try to buy this out from under me, and the price gets cut in half, rounded up. So this building would be only 2 or 3, excuse me. Actually, it would always be 5. That's what this special meaning right here means. But let's pretend it would be only 3. They could buy this out from me by only having to pay 3, and then I would choose, do I want to fight them for this, which we would then duel it out, or I could just simply say, you know what, no, you can have that. I don't want to risk dying. Now, at the end of every round, if I want to keep the buildings I own, I have to spend a bullet. I have to, I'm defending the building from the zombies in a sense. And so I would have to spend a bullet, so you don't just get to keep these for the entire game without having to constantly pay for them. That's basically the idea of the game. You are going to play a number of rounds until you clear the town completely of zombies. At any point when there are no zombies in the town, whether that's in the street or on these buildings, then that's going to signal high noon, in which case all players get one final turn to try to position themselves for the most points at the end of the game. You do get points for the buildings. You get points for the zombies that you've killed. You also get points for the tokens, the notoriety point tokens that you have, and whoever has the most points is going to be the winner, and that is how you play the Quick and the Undead. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back, and now Sam and I are going to share our thoughts on the Quick and the Undead, and let you see some gameplay footage of our 2-player playthrough of this game. Sam, first impressions of this game. You've got this board with all these cards on it. You've got these cowboy meeples. You've got zombies. What were your thoughts when you first saw this on the table?
Well, I think if there's one type of game that we've played a lot of or maybe have a lot of, it's zombie games. That's kind of what started us playing more board games, is playing Dead of Winter.
Right.
So I'm used to zombie games. They're all kind of have a unique spin. It's all zombies. But this one, the uniqueness, is the Wild Wild West aspect of it.
Sure.
We don't have one that's similar to that. So it's intriguing.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I don't know of many board games with the combination of these two themes, the mashup there. I'm sure several gamers out there, maybe even non-gamers who are into video games, would be aware of the video game Undead Redemption. It takes place in the Red Dead Redemption series of games. Very popular game. That's what this game this board game makes me think of is that video game. But yeah, you're exactly right. This isn't a very popular mashup of themes. Do you feel like this is something that intrigues you? Is it something that pulls you to the table?
I think so. I mean, I wanted to see, what side am I on here? Am I a cowboy? Am I a zombie?
Okay. Yeah.
Just looking at it for the first time, not knowing how to play it. I mean, that draws you to it a little bit, I think. Just, is this cowboys against zombies? Is this cowboys turning into zombies?
Yeah.
So...
Well, I think it's a very cool thing that they did, in a way, kind of employ that idea that if you get killed, if you're shot and you die, you do turn into a zombie in this game, and you add another zombie onto the board. You don't get to play as those zombies, so that's not something that really happens in this game, but they do have that undead kind of vibe with this game, and I think that's goes with the theme, obviously. So let's talk about the strategy behind this, Sam. As is the case with a lot of worker placement games, it can be one of those things that doesn't always work very well when playing with new or non-gamers, just simply for the fact that you have to know what all of the spaces do for you, what they provide, and the actions, and so there's a bit of kind of memorizing the board, if you will, and that can be a heavy burden for a new gamer or a non-gamer. Yeah. How do you feel that was with this particular game?
I mean, I think it's probably middle of the road. It's definitely not the most confusing worker placement game I've played. There's not an overwhelming amount of spots to move to, but there is some iconography that is a little bit difficult to understand,
okay,
or at least to memorize. Okay, I can do this, but not this in this place.
Right.
A lot of the places, I will say, maybe a downside, just kind of, I think it depends on how many people you're playing with. When you're playing with 2 people, a lot of these spaces are giving you the same thing.
Right.
So there's not a whole lot of
there's not a lot of competition for the spaces,
because,
I feel like.
Okay, that's fine, you went there, I can go here. I don't really feel like battling you at the moment.
Yeah.
We did that a couple times, whereas some other games, there are much more desirable places that you want to go than others.
Yeah, I was going to point out at some point in this video that for me, maybe a con on this one is that it doesn't feel like the spaces are too restrictive. If you don't get the one space that you wanted to go to, there's several other spaces that either provide the same resources or other resources that are just as good.
You don't have to completely change your strategy if you don't get that one spot.
Right. Now, I do want to also say, as a pro for this game, in my opinion, this is a different kind of worker placement in the sense that you're not necessarily competing for those spaces in the first place at all, because you're simultaneously playing your pieces at the same time, your workers, and so you're not sure where everybody's going anyhow, and you end up going to the same spot. You just duel each other out for that.
Yeah.
So that's where the competition comes in for those spaces, is dueling one another. But really, I just sort of felt like there were too many spaces on the board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a couple in the entire game that I never went to.
Yeah, for sure. But let's get back to kind of the idea of what you're trying to accomplish with this game. Sam, it's always a thing I want to make sure to ask you. Was it always clear what your goal was and how to accomplish that with this one?
I think it was pretty straightforward. And I don't know if it's just because I've played worker placement games, are probably a comfort area of mine, so I understood that. But yeah, it was pretty clear. I really did enjoy the
buildings.
And I think we realized at the end that really was the reason I won. Was because I got that one building and was able to sacrifice for it time and time again, and you weren't willing to, and then I won.
Yeah, the buildings are very important in this game. They will definitely build up your income, if you will, like what the things you're getting each time. Each round, but they'll also give you those points you really need to get on top at the end of the game. It's just how much do you want to sacrifice to remain in control of those buildings. And for me, I felt like that was the bigger idea with this game, is the area control of, do I control this building? Do I control that building? Okay, I have control of those buildings. Do I want to remain in control? I'm really kind of losing ground on my resources of bullets, and that's going to cost me in the next round. I think that's a cool balance that you're having to make, and there were some good choices there behind it. Much more so than maybe the worker placement. Because I felt like the worker placement aspect was just kind of a cool experience, and not cool in the sense of this game's cool, but in the sense of not on fire for me, if that makes sense.
I did think that
the shooting
was unique. In most of these types of games, it's like 3 shots and you're out. But I thought that this was really unique. You have certain spots, you have to roll a certain number. You have, it's 6, right? 6.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different than other games like that.
I agree with that too. This is, it is dice rolling in this game as far as the dueling and the shootouts go, but I really like the mitigation aspect to that, and picking which numbers you want to be the ones you're trying to roll, how many numbers you're trying to hold on to with your bullets versus your casings. I thought that was cool and very thematic too.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of this game. So for me, there were several highlights of this game that stood out to me. It's that area control, it's that dueling, but it bills itself as a worker placement, and for me that's just kind of a little run of the mill.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, so let's get into pros and cons on this game, Sam. We've covered several different areas on this one, but you as a non-gamer, you're looking at this in terms of how does this appeal to somebody who's not typically used to playing too many games? And so what were the things that stood out to you that would make you want to say that this is a good game to play with non-gamers?
I do think it was pretty straightforward as far as what your goal was. I think, you still need to, I think anytime that a non-gamer is playing, it helps to have somebody that's patient playing with them, or able to say, okay, I realize that this person doesn't play games all the time, because I still had to ask questions. There was still, I don't remember what this means. What can I do here? How many moves can I make again? What do I have to sacrifice to keep this building? But in general, the idea is pretty straightforward. You're not having to make a million decisions each move. I think that that's a good place to start for a non-gamer. And the theme, I think zombies is pretty universal at this point. Maybe not as big as it was when The Walking Dead first came out, but it's still, people tend to like zombies.
Yeah. Okay. Fun factor, I didn't ask you that before, but while we're hearing pros and cons, let me ask you, was that a pro for you? Was this game fun?
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime you can die but come back as a zombie, it makes it better than just dying.
Okay, sure.
So, yeah.
And then you mentioned that it was pretty straightforward. This isn't a very complicated worker placement game, and having to keep track of 15 different spots on the board. A lot of these spaces tend to do similar actions.
Yeah. So. I think that is a pro for a non-gamer. I think it's a con for a gamer.
Right, yeah.
But if your worker placement games aren't really where I would say start with a non-gamer, because there just is a lot of decisions to be made, but this may be one of those that is on the easier side, so
I would agree with that.
It would be a good starting point.
I would absolutely agree with that. Let me ask you about your cons with this one. What stood out in a not so good way? I guess I'm having to play the gamer and a non-gamer in this, just because I have played so many worker placement games. I would agree. There's some spots that just seem like, why is it there? I'm never going there. Other than that, con, it was a pretty quick game. It didn't last forever, so I think that, again, that's a pro. I'm trying to think of cons here, but I can't think of a whole lot. So not too many with this one, it sounds like.
It was a good, straightforward game. I don't think it had a huge wow factor, as there is a lot of zombie games out there, but it was a good one. It was enjoyable.
Okay. I think maybe for me, teaching the game, a con that I want to make sure to throw out there was the rule book didn't flow too well for me. I found myself having to jump back and forth between different sections of the rule book to really get a good idea of how this game works. So that is one thing that I do want to say. Another thing too, you mentioned the iconography in this game can be a little bit of a challenge. those building cards, there's several different building cards in this game, and so it's going to be different for you every time you play it, which is a pro in the sense of replayability. You're never quite likely to have the same game more than once. But a lot of those cards don't have very clear iconography and what they mean. You'll have to reference in the rule book what each card does. And anytime that's the case, you're almost always going to have to tell players that's what this card does. Next round comes around. What does that do? Oh, that's what this card does.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to accept that with this game, that you're going to have to keep going back to the rule book. So there you go. That is the pros and cons that we feel with the Quick and the Undead. Let's get to our scores. Sam, a scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. What are you going to give this one?
I thought it was a fun game. Again, it was easy, pretty easy to understand, fairly quick, worker placement, which gets higher points in my book. I think we'd play it. I think it's a good Halloween game. So I think I'd probably give it like a 7.8.
Wow, okay. All right, you're pretty high on this one. For me, I think, I've mentioned that it's the main idea with this is worker placement, but for me, that's not where this game shines. It's that area control and the shooting out aspect. I really enjoyed those parts. And so for this one, I think I'm going to say 7.2, as it is predominantly a worker placement, but in that regard, it's just okay in my opinion. So 7.2 for me on that one. Sam, is this a game that you would recommend playing with non-gamers?
Yeah, I think it's a really good starting point for worker placement games.
All right, well, there you go. There you have it. That is The Quick and the Undead from InsideUp Games. Check it out.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.